I've just returned from France, watching the opening stage of the Tour de France. And I spent some time trawling around the team bikes and the team trucks. And these are 7 of my tech observations, from Aero to lightweight to one by to short cranked. These are some of the tech trends being used by Tour de France pros this year. Aero is everything. Nothing new, but the speed in the race demand maximum aero. And while the stages of the Tour de France might be shorter than they were in the past, the speeds have gone through the roof. The average speed on the opening stage around Lille was just eye-watering. It's like a crit race for 4 hours, just insane. And the riders are fully embracing aero, from helmets to skin suits to socks, shoes, and the bikes. The bikes are aero to the max. And so we see the likes of a Cervelo S5 being used by the Visma team, the Carnago Y1 RS being embraced more widely by Tadej and co. There's a Bianchi Ultra, Mathieu Van der Poel only rides the Canyon Aero. And it has become an arms race for bike manufacturers and teams to try and develop the best aero solutions for the riders. And interesting how some brands are going fully in on one bike to do everything, both aero and lightweight, like Trek Madone, the Specialized Tarmac, while other brands like Cervelo, Canyon, Giant, Bianchi have a dedicated aero bike while still offering a lightweight bike as well. Because I guess rather than trying to make the aero bike compromise in that pursuit of low weight and give away some aero, just make the bike as aero as possible and be damned with the weight, and then just offer a lightweight bike for the climbing stages. And there are some big climbing stages coming up, as I found out earlier last week when I rode stage 18 and stage 19 of this year's Tour de France. In an upcoming video, my experience will be shared. Now, while aero is clearly everything, for flat stages where the speeds are insanely high, weight is still important too, and pro riders have long obsessed about weight, whether measuring their food in the morning or when the bikes to make them as light as possible. And with the UCI weight limit of 6.8 kilograms, that's always been a target for riders and teams and manufacturers to aim for. But bikes with the latest technology are already that light. Tyres are getting wider with disc brakes, electronic gears, and even lightweight bikes like a Tarmac still have some aero as well. But it's clear for the tough mountain stages to come in the Alps and the Pyrenees, quite a few riders like Tadej and Remco and Jonas had bikes that were really chasing the grams to be as light as possible. For example, Remco Evenepoel had a Specialized Tarmac S8 built as a climbing bike. His team are sponsored by Specialized and only have the Tarmac S8 to use. They don't have a pure aero bike or a lightweight climbing bike, just one bike to do both. But the team had built a specially lightweight bike that weighs, according to the team, 6.8 kilograms on the nose. And it starts with the thinnest layer of black paint because black paint is lighter. And then carbon fiber chain rings like we've seen on Tadej's bikes. The new Roval wheels with carbon fiber spokes to save more weight. A real obsessive attention to detail to save weight, get the bike as light as possible. And then his regular sort of non-climbing bike is a bit heavier with different wheels and tyres and components on it. It also shows the challenge of making a bike that light. Despite all the amazing technology, bikes aren't easy down to 6.8 kilograms. It is still clearly an effort to get a bike down to that weight, like fully ready to race weight with pedals and all the other governments you need on a bike to race. So aero is clearly everything where the stage demands it, and we are seeing a real aero battle between the top bike brands. But then weight still matters when in the mountains, and some riders will use an aero bike in the mountains, but most riders will opt for a lighter bike. So Tadej, for example, will use the Y1 RS on the flat stages for maximum aero, but that bike is 7.2, 7.3 kilos. So for the mountain stages, he'll be on a V5 RS, a brand new bike which I rode earlier this year, linked to that video down below. And that bike is right on the UCI weight limit of 6.8 kilograms with the new MV SES 4.5 Pro wheels, which are sub 1300 grams, has a one-piece MV handlebar with no paint on it at all. You can see the carbon fiber weave and layout to save a few grams. Really trim the weight around the headset and the top cap as well, especially made by NV. And of course, carbon fiber chain rings as well to save yet more weight. And one detail really shows that obsessive nature in really pursuing maximum aero and roll resistance on flat stages, but then low weight for the climbing stages is the tyre choice. So Talley's team will use a 30mm wide tyre on the flat stages for maximum rolling resistance benefits. But in the mountains, they use a 28mm wide tyre, the TTTR time trial tyre, because it's lighter, because they don't need as much of rolling resistance benefits when the road goes up. So using a narrower, lighter tyre on that climbing focused bike. So that really shows the attention to detail, really trying to maximise the aero and also maximise the weight savings as well. I do wonder how long before we get to a point where that aero bike is 6.8 kilos and this battle, this tension between aero and weight and bike choice for the riders and that focus on max aero and max lightweight becomes a moot point, as an aero bike can be down to that U-side weight limit. But right now, aero bikes are a long way from being down to that U-side weight limit. Jonas Vingegaard's tiny size S5 is 7.1, Tadej's is 7.2, 7.3. So they're all well over 7 kilos. The common trend for the last few years has been wide tyres, and looking around all the tyres, or most of the teams I've made it to over the last few days, they're all on wide tyres. I didn't see anything narrower than a 28. 28 was the narrowest I saw, 30 was the widest I saw. Those two widths seem to be the standard, and that reflects the latest understanding around the rolling resistance benefits of a wide tyre at low pressures, and also designed for wide rims, because wheels are getting wider, that internal rim width is getting wider. We've come a long way from, what, 17 or 19mm internal width, now up to 23, 25, and a wide tyre designed around that wide inner width for perfect harmony of aerodynamics. So yeah, tyres are wide. They're also tubeless as well. Didn't see one sign of a tubular tyre, a glue-on tub, or a clincher in a tube setup. All I saw was tubeless, tubular tyres everywhere. Handlebars are still narrow, and I was able to measure a few handlebars discreetly with the mechanics not seeing with my tape measure, but tricky to film and measure at the same time. And they're all narrower than the recent ruling from the UCI around handlebar width announced just a few weeks ago before the Tour de France. But that rule doesn't come into effect until next year. And from my informal survey of bikes that I saw before the race started, none of the teams had paid any attention to that UCI rule and were still running the same handlebar widths and setups they've been running all year. And hoods being angled over are less extreme than they used to be. They're more kind of a few degrees rather than a lot of degrees. But handlebars are still very narrow, 36, 37, 38, and a slight angle of the hoods. But the days of the hoods being angled in lows that we saw for a while has definitely gone, and are now at a fairly modest angle. But yeah, the setups are still narrow, and it doesn't seem the teams have taken any notice of that UCI rule. Maybe they will for next year when it comes into effect, or maybe by then the UCI might have done a U-turn and realise that it makes no difference at all. We saw no crashes in the first few stages as a result of those handlebar setups. So yeah, very interesting observation there in handlebar width and hood setup. Short cranks are still a popular trend. I saw 160s and 165 for Jonas and Tadej and Remco, but not all riders are embracing the short cranks. Lots were still on 170, 172.5, I saw a lot of, and even some 175 on bigger bikes as well. So I probably saw more 172.5s and 160s or 165s in my very informal survey. So clear, while the short crank trend is popular, it's not a magic bullet that all teams and riders are embracing as a magic bullet to more performance. So yeah, very interesting that not all riders are embracing short cranks, but lots are still doing short cranks with their setups. On the group set front, there was nothing new from Shimano or SRAM or Campag. Didn't see any Campag bikes. I didn't make it to see a Campag bike. And there's no new Shimano Dura-Race Di2 on show at all. No wireless Dura-Race. I didn't see any sign of that at all. SRAM Red Axis, very popular of course. But the big trend I saw on the opening stages was a lot of one-by. Jonas had his S5 set up one-by with SRAM Red Axis, but with a regular cassette on the back. And lots of Little Trek team had a one-by setup with massive 56 tooth chain rings. It's just colossal. So lots of one-by for the flat stages. Cervelo claims you can save up to 2 watts by going one-by versus two-by. You've got one chainring versus 2 chainrings and no front derailleur. And also save a bit of weight as well and simpler shifting. So one-by has had a funny history in the Tour de France. It had a bad time 6-7 years ago with that certain team that you all remember, of course. But now with 13 speed and 12 speed, one-by is definitely being taken more seriously and lots of riders are using it. And I wouldn't imagine a team like Visma Lita Bike would be forced by SRAM to use one-by against their wishes, against their will. And a GC contender like Jonas wouldn't use one-by because SRAM had told them to. I don't believe that's the case at all. So yeah, interesting to see the team. They have all the data these days. They have loads of data, testing data on one-by for two-by and all the other metrics they test a bike on. So really interesting to see more riders on one-by than ever before. And finally, marginal gains still live on. Marginal gains were coined by Dave Brailsford at Team Sky, and it's still an approach that the top teams take. And clearly the well-funded teams like Visma, Lita Bike and UAE Emirates really employ that marginal gains. Every detail, every single detail is considered. And I had some interesting conversations with mechanics and team personnel about the lengths they go to now. So like Cervelo, for example, and Visma team, they have data on where the Aero bike and the lightweight bike would be an advantage. They have all the data of the stages, the gradients of every climb, the speed the riders go up the climbs at, and they know precisely which bike will be the fastest bike over that course. They give that data to the riders. The riders are then free to choose the bike they want. Some riders have personal preference for aero, lightweight, but the teams and the brands have the data on which setup can be best. So they really are fine-tuning their bike setup based on all that data they have available. And another detail that stood out for me is Tadej Pogačar has bikes set up with wide tyres with flat stages on the Aero bike and narrow tyres for the mountain stages where weight is a focus. And also, he has 11 spare bikes, 11 spare road bikes, the Y1 RS and the V5 RS, as well as his time trial bikes. And also, another detail the team shared with me, they have spare bikes set up for bad weather. So if the forecast is showing rain, they'll have bikes set up for those conditions, so different tyres and lower pressures. So for example, if it started raining during a stage, he could swap onto a wet weather bike. And that's sort of detail I've never heard of before, having a bike set up with wet weather in mind when it comes to the bike setup, the tyre pressure setup on that bike. So that really is showing how much the team are really paying attention to every small detail. Every detail is considered. They are a well-funded team and that helps, but they are really putting that funding to good use. And it's clear UAE Emirates are really tech focused. They've apparently done their own aero testing on wheels, done all their own testing on tyres. They really obsessed around the technology and their technology partners and pushing the likes of MV and the other technology partners to really raise the game and deliver them products that can give Tadej every possible advantage and edge over his rivals in the Tour de France. So those are my 7 tech observations from this year's Tour de France. Let me know what you think of the tech trends by dropping a comment down below. What do you feel on aero, on weight, one-by, short cranks? Drop a comment down below. And if you want to see my video on riding part of the stage 1 with closed roads, then watch the video right up here.